I just want you to know that while I've been wearing this shirt for this album, it's the third day right now, I have washed it. I don't want you to think that I haven't washed it at all. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope that you're having an amazing day. My name is Justin, and today we are continuing our album listen of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway by Genesis, which was released in 1974. Today we're going to continue on with side 3 of the album. This would include the songs Lily White, Lilith, The Waiting Room, Anyway, Here Comes the Supernatural, Here Comes the Supernatural, Anethestis, The Lamia, Silent Sorrow in Empty Boats. I feel like I'm Nemo saying, "See anemone." My wife and I went out to brunch today. Today's Saturday, by the way. We went out to brunch, listened to some Joni Mitchell on the way, listened to some live music at the place. She got poached eggs with like salmon cakes or crab cakes or something. And I just got an omelet with some meat inside. Finally got to go out a little bit. You know, we've been like staying at home and everything for a while. So it was nice to have some sort of, a very, very tiny sliver of normalcy. But I hope that you guys have had a great day as well. Also, I forgot to mention that today, I didn't do it yet beforehand, but today I did go through the actual record sleeve, and I did read up to where I'm at right now in the story. And what I really like about this is that it basically gives you a strong narrative, a really nice synopsis of what's going on in the actual album itself. So, you guys probably can't see, but we're about right here when he's at the chamber and trying to find his way out from the Chamber of 32 Doors. So I read all of this up to here. I didn't want to go further and, you know, look into the story. I kind of like coming with my own interpretations to it and seeing what I get out of it. But, so yeah. All right, let's get into it. This is Genesis with The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, side 3 of the album.
The chamber was in confusion, all the voices shouting loud. I could only just hear a voice quite near say, "Please help me through the crowd." Said if I helped her through, she could help me too, but I could see that she was wholly blind. From her pale face and her pale skin, a moonlight shines. Lily white Lilith, she gonna take you through the tunnel of night. Lily white Lilith, she gonna lead you right. When I led her through the river, the angry noise began to grow. She says, "Let me feel the way the breezes blow, and I'll show you where to go." So I followed her into a big round cage. She said, "They're coming for you now, don't be afraid." Then she sat me down on a cold stone throne, carved in jade. Lily white Lilith, she gonna take you through the tunnel of night. Lily white Lilith, she gonna lead you right. the pumping's nearly over for my sweetheart. This is the one for me. Time to meet the chef. Oh boy, the running man is out of death. Feel cold, the road is getting hard to catch my breath. It's back to ash. Now you've had your flash, boy. The rocks in time compress your blood to oil, your flesh to coal, enrich the soil. Not everybody's gold. Anyway, they say she comes on a pale horse, but I'm sure I hear a train. Oh boy, I don't even feel no pain. I guess I must be driving myself insane. Damn it all, 'tis earth like a hole in heaven, or heaven like a hole in earth. How wonderful to be so profound, when everything you are is dying underground. I feel the pull on the rope, let me off at the rainbow. I could have been exploded in space, different orbits for my bones. Not me, just quietly buried in stones. Keep the deadline open with my maker. See me stretch the God's elastic acre. The doorbell rings and it's good morning, rail. So sorry you have to wait. It won't be long. Yeah, she's really, really late. Here comes the supernatural anesthetist. If he wants you to snuff it, all he has to do is puff it. He's such a fine dancer. the scent grows richer. He knows he must be near. He finds a long passageway lit by chandelier. Each step he takes, the perfumes change from familiar fragrance to flavors strange. A magnificent chamber meets his eye. Inside, a long rose water pool is shrouded by fine mist. Stepping in the moist silence, with a warm breeze he's gently kissed. Thinking he is quite alone, he enters the room as if it were his own. But ripples on the sweeping water reveal some company unthought of. Rail stands astonished, doubting his sight, struck by beauty, gripped in fright. 3 vermilion snakes of female face, the smallest motion filled with grace. Muted melodies fill the echoing hall, but there is no sign of warning in the siren's call. Rail, welcome, we are the Lamia of the pool. We have been waiting for our waters to bring you cool. Putting fear beside him, he trusts in beauty blind. He slips into the nectar, leaving his shredded clothes behind. With their tongues they test, taste and judge all that is mine. They move in a series of caresses that glide up and down my spine. As they nibble the fruit of my flesh, I feel no pain, only a magic that a name would stain. With the first drop of my blood in their veins, their faces are convulsed in mortal pains. The fairest cries, we all have loved you well. Empty snake-like body floats, silent sorrow in empty boats. A sickly sourness fills the room, the bitter harvest of a dying bloom. Looking for motion I know I will not find. I stroke the curls now turning pale, in which I lain entwined. Oh, Lamia, your flesh that remains I will take as my food. It is the scent of garlic that lingers on my chocolate fingers.
man. Side 3. Oh, I have a lot to say on side 3 of the album. So first of all, musically, this side comes off as, at least thus far, the most experimental, where Genesis are willing to try new things that at least I haven't heard before from their music. So for example, they begin to experiment with like noise and psychedelic kind of atmospheres, which reminded me of early Pink Floyd that I heard, for example, on Interstellar Overdrive. But then they so easily shift gears from claustrophobia and noise and cluttered into, like we just heard, open-ended beauty. Melodies that are relaxing and calming and are just drifting you into different places. This side shows a lot of different facets of what Genesis is, are, and could be. Another thing that I really, really, really want to point out that I really connected with in listening to this side in particular is one word sticks out to me: mythology. Genesis, even in their past songs, have had a tendency to build mythologies, work lyrics that are built around stories, fables, that kind of thing, right? I mean, whether they're basing it off of like Greek mythology, which we're going to talk about, Greek mythology, like for example with Fountain of Salmacis off of their album Nursery Crime, the best song on that album, or making up their own, like Musical Box. They've always had a very strong narrative leaning. And I think that that's one of the cool things about them is that, yes, they're giving you a strong story, but they're also giving you that backing composition to like make it come alive. I feel like personally from what I've listened to, this side shows that the most. The coming together of their own mythology. Because that's what this album is. This album is really their own mythology that they came up with, and they packed it into this huge double album with 4 sides. That's awesome. Even if you don't love the music or even if you don't like this album, I think that you got to give Genesis credit for, in a sense, practicing their story writing beforehand and then saying, hey, let's write like this big odyssey, basically, based on Rail, based on this character, and let him go on this journey and see where it takes him. And the story is easy enough to follow to an extent. The story is easy enough to follow just the straight A to B narrative, but there's so much symbolism, there's so many metaphors and meanings you can get out of it that it leaves a lot of room for interpretation, which I love, which is also the reason I haven't read past where we were at before, because I want to see like what my own initial reactions are to the actual story and see if I kind of get kind of close. Before we start diving into each of the songs, I want to kind of talk about the mythology just surface level before we get into like the deeper details of all of the songs and everything. But so I saw like the titles like Lily White Lilith. Well, I know Lilith, I don't know the exact story, but I think Lilith is like supposed to be like a daughter of Eve or somehow related to Adam and Eve. I honestly don't really remember how. But same thing, a figure from mythology, right? And then the Lamia, or the Lamia, the Lamia. Don't know what a Lamia is, but from what I'm reading, it's almost like either like a siren or, remember in the Odyssey, the witch, I think her name was Circe? Start with a C. All right. What was her name? You guys are going to fill me in, and I could look it up, but I don't want to cheat. But there was a witch that held Odysseus on her island for, I think it was, 8 years, and he thought it was like a day or something like that. I don't remember exact stories. I don't remember the exact timeline or whatever, but he was there for like a day, and then she was like, oh no, you've been here for like 10 years or whatever. And at first he didn't know he was a prisoner. He thought he was a guest, but he turned out to be a prisoner. So you kind of get the same idea in Lamia. Now, the next song, which is also referenced in the Lamia, Silent Sorrow and Empty Boats. Before I even got into the song, I was already thinking of the Riverman from Greek mythology. Charon, the boatman who takes the spirits from the world of the living into the world of the dead. We're going to talk about that as well, because even though that may not be exactly what's meant in the story and what they're talking about, I think it could be at least argued that it's a possibility. Lilith enters so perfectly. Big guitar in overdrive, nice drums, and you get that nice crunchy riff as well. Bum, 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 bum. Almost sounds somewhat reminiscent of like Phantom of the Opera, but then so quickly it changes. That's cool how it opens up. Now, what I really like about it, and by the way, I'm going to talk a lot about the story in this particular one because I think I'm kind of getting it, and at least in my mind, it's all coming together really, really nicely. So, at this point, as we were left last time in the Chamber of 32 Doors, Rail is trying to find his way out. this lady, Lilith, says, hey, I'm trying to find my way out too. And it looks like they kind of team up, right? So the song begins initially pretty heavy. Then it lightens up as she's the one that's saying, like, hey, I'm trying to get out too. As he's receiving help, the song lightens up. The song doesn't feel as stressful. Why? Because Rail doesn't feel as stressed right now. He feels like, okay, maybe there's some hope and I can find my way out of this chamber now that I've met this nice lady, Lilith. And come on, that's a really nice riff. With Hackett on the guitar, right? That has to be Mike doing that heavy, heavy riff. And then Hackett just... That's good. And then even later on, when Lilith actually disappears and leaves him alone, the song empties out again and he feels like he's alone. So it's just really cool use of the space. And, musically it sounds great. Phil, actually all of them are kind of like at 110% throughout this whole album. Phil just brings so much power. I feel like Rutherford also does an underrated job of bringing just as much dynamicism into the songs as well. And then Hackett and Banks are just pure melody, with Peter just leading you down this tunnel, so to speak. As I said before, in this song, basically he runs into Lilith, who basically he uses to try and find his way out. He even says at one point, said if I helped her through, she could help me too. But I could see that she was wholly blind from her pale face and pale skin, a moonlight shine. So, I'm assuming literally like she's blind. So how is she going to help him get out? I don't know, she must know something that he doesn't. And then she takes him through the tunnel of night, so a tunnel of darkness. They were in the dark literally, I would assume, but they're figuratively in the dark because they have no idea where they are. When I'd led her through the people, the angry noise began to grow. She said, let me feel the way the breezes blow, and I'll show you where to go. So she doesn't need to see, she's going to, use her other senses to find their way out. He follows her, and she says, they're coming for you, don't be afraid. Then she sat me down on the cold stone throne carved in jade. And then that's when she disappears, leaving him in the dark. And at the end of the song, 2 golden globes float into the room and a blaze of white light fills the air. So she led him to a way out. She said, hey, just wait here. They're coming for you. Good luck. Now, what those 2 golden globes exactly are, I got no idea. But what it leads into in the next song, The Waiting Room, we're just waiting. Now, what I find really cool is that this is the most abstract track that we've heard so far in this album. It really is. And as I mentioned before, it reminds me of Interstellar Overdrive in some ways, from Pink Floyd. Just because of this noise aspect, blending of dissonance and distant melodies, because there are melodies, as far as they are sometimes, and eventually it all coalesces together into a more conventional song and a more conventional piece. But at least for the time being, and where we've left off in this story, this does feel like something approaching. It's something indescribable, as I would describe these sounds. They're indescribable with all these chimes, and you got some, I don't even know what to call them, weird electronic chirps and loud crashes and things coming in and out. So in the last line of Lilith, he said, and a blaze of white light fills the air. So you can imagine like a big flash, right? And he's probably just really dazed and confused at this moment. He's almost seeing stars. This was representative of that state that he's currently in. Now you got a weird kind of didgeridoo kind of sound here, which, at least to me, immediately makes me think of some sort of ritual, some sort of spiritual awakening, or something in that realm happening. Which also gives me the idea that, okay, maybe there is some sort of transcendence that's going on in this part. Maybe some sort of change. There has to be a change because he's apparently escaped from that chamber. This is just that transition from the chamber into whatever's coming next. For most of this piece, it really is just a lot of noise and build-ups and kind of weird things going on. But I think that this works really well within the album, right? And as you guys have mentioned, this is an album. And I get it. It is an album. There's a few tracks that you can listen to on their own, but overall, you got to sit down and listen to this at least from point A to point B, from point B to C to D. And it's tracks like these or Hairless Heart, which act as interludes, but also as showcases of what the band can do outside perhaps of their norm. And out of this really harsh melody begins to fade in, and it sounds like war is about to begin. Now this sound I'm imagining is Banks. It sounds like a theremin to me. It probably is, and it's probably some sort of synth or something, but it sounds a lot like a theremin, which reminds me of an alien kind of sound. And I mean, I would describe this whole album, this whole journey as alien. Even as that theremin-like sound is sustained, you get Hackett that builds up these really, really nice clashing guitars. And Phil, I mean, he's breaking it down. He is absolutely breaking it down. I feel sorry for Phil's drum kit. I would apologize after each set when they were playing live to the drum kit, like, hey, I'm sorry you had to go through that. Like, I enjoyed it, but I'm sure you probably didn't like that beating you just took. Now, I'm reading just some of the side notes for this particular song, and Tony Banks describes creating this song in Hugh Fielder's book, The Book of Genesis. The best jam we had in the rehearsal room ended up being called the waiting room, which we called the evil jam, who we switched off all the lights and just made noises. And the first time, it was really frightening. See, now I think that that's really cool, and I've mentioned it before in other videos with other bands and artists that have done the same thing. And even I've done similar things, you know, just turning off all the lights and just playing music, right? Melodies, dissonance, it all comes together. But there's something different about playing music in the dark because you're solely relying on the sound. Not even like, you know, I'm sure you know where your fingers are playing and that kind of thing, but you're really just relying on the sound of yourself and also the people around you. So I think that that's a really cool way to bring about a jam, bring about a track, and I think that overall it's pretty successful. Now, as we push into Anyway, we begin to talk about death. It's pretty clear cut from the lyrics. Nice build up with piano from Tony, and then getting into this melody here, in which Tony continues to carry. And a strong, succinct bass line as well. And this track is really dynamic in the rhythm section, and also in Peter's vocal tones. He carries a different sort of emotional weight than I think a lot of other singers would. Somehow he comes across more real than someone who was, I don't know. Somehow he just comes across a lot more real. A lot more rail. Out of that synth, then in the middle of this track as it builds up, we get into one of the coolest little sections here. It's gonna get really heavy for a few moments here. Listen. The house is about to come down. Tony speeds it up. The drama of it all. This sounds evil. This is soul crushing. Are you kidding me? Do you guys think that this is like one of the coolest little sections? And then we get into this jam right here, which really brings it back down. Still retains some of that heaviness, but brings it down just a little bit, and Steve goes crazy there. Now, I think that that is one of the coolest sections that I've heard in this album thus far. Just the way it all comes crashing down. To be honest, I thought that Genesis were going to go kind of metal for a brief second. I mean, they did do it for a little bit, and they could have easily broken down into like a really, really heavy breakdown, which, gotta be honest, I was kind of wanting. Now, even though it didn't go into that direction, I do enjoy what they did do, especially hearing Hackett's solo there. Everything comes right back down as well. And this is just a really melodic song. I think Genesis melodies are also an underrated aspect of the band because I feel like they come across simple sometimes, but there's so many layers going on between bass, guitar, and the keys and the synths and even the drums, and like there's so much going on in the melody land of things. I feel like they're maybe a little bit underrated in that specific regard. Now, as I mentioned, this song deals specifically with death, so let's talk about the lyrics in this one. I feel like this song, at least in this side, has some of the best lyrics here that I've heard at least. All the pumping's nearly over for my sweetheart. This is the one for me. Time to meet the chef. Like he's a recipe. That's hilarious. Oh boy, the running man is out of death. Feel cold and old, it's getting hard to catch my breath. Okay, so the first line, all the pumping's nearly over for my sweetheart. To be honest, I got two ideas out of that. I thought like, yeah, your literal heart, but maybe like his sweetheart, his girl, you know, maybe. It's back to ash. Now you've had your flash, boy. Like your life was nothing but a flash in the grand scheme of things. The rocks in time compress, your blood to oil, your flesh to coal, enrich the soil. Not everybody's goal. I think that those lines are so cool. In time, your body, like when you die, it just, you know, becomes part of the rocks. Your blood becomes part of the oil, your flesh to coal. You know, like fossil fuels, you just become fuel for, you know, the people that are still alive. You enrich the soil. And then he says, anyway, they say she comes on a pale horse, but I'm sure I hear a train. Kind of reminds me of Christopher with Spanish Train. Oh boy, I don't even feel no pain. I guess I must be driving myself insane. And then this is also a really cool little paragraph here. Does the earth plug a hole in heaven, or heaven plug a hole in earth?
I like that a lot.
How wonderful to be so profound when everything you are is dying underground. So it's almost like in his last moments as he's feeling death drawing nearer and nearer, he's having all these profound thoughts and he's like, yeah, it probably doesn't matter much right now. And then at the end, the doorbell rings and it's, good morning, Rail. So sorry you had to wait. It won't be long. Yeah, she's very rarely late. So I would imagine that is talking about death. Like he is now waiting for death and death is on the way. Moving into the supernatural anesthetist. Hold on. Let's just turn up my volume. Let's type in the word. Okay.
Anesthetist.
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 Hey, getting into this song, here comes the supernatural. We get a really fun little riff here. It's very light, and then it starts to groove just a little further in. This is a really bouncy rhythm section. Love what Hackett and Mike are doing here. This is just incredibly cheerful. You still get the big kick with the that bass pedal. This is just a fun little dance for Hackett to kind of solo off of, and he does a really great solo throughout this piece. Now, there's not a lot of lyrics in this particular part, but he says, here comes the supernatural. If he wants you to snuff it, all he has to do is puff it. He's such a fine dancer. So, I don't know why, but I'm thinking of this guy who's coming in. He's coming in to put you to sleep, basically like death, as we just mentioned off the last song. And he's such a fine dancer. He's just like... He says if he wants you to snuff it, all he has to do is puff it. So all he has to do is like... And you're out. You're done. You're knocked out. Now, as we get into the next song, the Lamia, however it's pronounced. I like this open, cavernous kind of sound and feeling that we get. At least I get. When I listen to this, I'm thinking that he's in this cave, this mystical cave, and there's this blue water right in front of him that's sparkling. And there's something just very ethereal and supernatural about this place. There's a mystery about it. He doesn't know what it is, but he feels pretty good. And the music at this point has the same kind of quality that you would hear in perhaps a later song like Entangled, where it's just like so mellow. The actual music itself draws you in like a siren, just like the Lamia or the Lamia eventually draws Rail in. You gotta admit, you're kind of seduced by the pure melody and the pure beauty of the music and the sound itself. And along with Peter's very passionate singing, as the Lamia at this point arises and makes herself known to Rail, there's even a kind of suggestive and sexual nature to the sound as it's happening in the story here. And this is a lot different from Counting Out Time, right? Like this actually feels beautiful. And this song reminds me a lot of Fountain from Nursery Crime. Tony. His piano playing here even sounds to me like water drops that are just kind of falling off of the staglamites and the stalactites, whatever they're called, in the cave. This is a moment of bliss and beauty and nature. And even before that, the Lamia says, Rail, welcome, we are the Lamia of the pool. We have been waiting for our waters to bring you cool. So they've been waiting to meet him, they've been waiting for him so that they could, well, a few things, but so that he could be in their pool and finally find refreshment, finally find a break for all this chaos that's been happening before. And Tony's piano interlude right there handles that extremely well, because it does sound refreshing, especially after the heaviness and the weirdness, to be frank, of the sections we've heard before. And even Peter's tone when he's singing here, his delivery sounds very desirous. It's innocent. He doesn't know what he's getting into, but he's giving himself over, as he says, he trusts in beauty blind. He's giving himself over to the Lamia. And like I said, this is a completely different experience than he got in Counting Out Time. And once again, I gotta come back to those melodies. Incredibly powerful. So good. I love the depth of the bass pedals there. Always used like sprinkling on top of the cake. And Phil's lead-ins in several moments in the song But Phil's lead-ins into the bigger sections, with like the fills and everything, he's great. Listen, listen, listen. It's like he's setting sparks in a fire to the song at this point. Igniting Peter's delivery. Slow it all down, slow it all down. And that is just a huge, huge climax to the song. Peter really stands out really, really well here. Phil. I think when Phil lit the match, he burned himself because he's on fire right now. I'm not saying totally yet, so, you know, this is just a first impression of everything, but this may be, well, I would definitely put this up there on one of my top songs and top tracks of the album thus far. This one just has everything I like. It reminds me of Fountain off of Nursery Crime, which is also one of my favorite songs. So that's a win for me. Now, getting into the lyrics just briefly, as I mentioned before, he finds himself in this passage and there's perfumes and a chandelier. Like, it seems like a pretty cool place. Definitely better than the Chamber of 32 Doors. And he says, inside a long rosewater pool is shrouded by fine mist. Like I said, it's just very seductive. It feels like a really cool place. He steps into the moist silence with a warm breeze. He's gently kissed, thinking he's alone, but he's not alone. Soon, Rail stands astonished, doubting his sight, struck by beauty, gripped in fright. 3 vermilion snakes of female face, the smallest motion filled with grace. Okay, I don't know a lot about the actual mythological creature, the Lamia. So or the Lamia. I keep on saying it different every single time. let me see. Because what I'm kind of getting out of it is it's like a Medusa-like creature, right? Like, he's talking about snakes, but he's also eventually involved with them. So, I mean, he says that they're beautiful. So it must be some sort of woman-like thing. So I'm looking at several pictures of, I guess, different, representations of a Lamia. And it's basically like, it's like a mermaid, but instead of a fish bottom, it's a snake bottom. That's the best description I can give you kind of offhand. And she must be very beautiful because he says the smallest motion filled with grace. And then they say, Rail, or she says, Rail, welcome, we are the Lamia. I guess it's more than one. We are the Lamia of the pool. We have been waiting for our waters to bring you cool, as I mentioned before. And then, as I mentioned in the next verse, he just gives himself over to them. Putting fear aside, he trusts in beauty blind. He slips into the nectar, leaving his shredded clothes behind. With their tongues they test, taste, and judge. All that is mine, they move in a series of caresses that glide up and down my spine. So, you ever see those... This is what I'm thinking of. You ever see those like documentaries or videos where it's like snake mating season, but for a particular type of snake, and like there's this cave and all the snakes are just writhing about and there's like hundreds of them just procreating. I'm getting kind of an image like that from this one. And like I said, this is a completely different experience than counting at the time. And I like the references of snakes in this themselves. With their tongues they test, taste, and judge, right? That is how a snake tastes the air to sense things around them. That's how they smell, basically, as far as I remember. So yes, they're using that in a more romantic way, but they're also using it in the way a snake would. Then eventually it says that they nibble the fruit of my flesh. I feel no pain, only a magic that a name would stain. With the first drop of my blood in their veins, their faces convulsed in mortal pains. And they say, we have all loved you, Rail. And then it seems like the Lamia dies. And I guess he's hungry because he says, well, your flesh that remains, I will take as my food. Okay. It is the scent of garlic that lingers on my chocolate fingers. So were they vampires? Are Lamia allergic to garlic and he accidentally killed them? But then at the end of it, he says, looking behind me, the water turns icy blue, the lights are dimmed, and once again, the stage is set for you. So we're done with this particular set piece, and we're ready to move on to the next and the last for this particular side. Story-wise, to an extent, I'm a little lost at this exact point because he was basically waiting for death, and then he found himself in this cave with this snake creature. And now it's just an instrumental piece. Now, this instrumental piece, which is very, very emotional, could be one of two things. Could be representative of just his state of mind after this encounter. As, like I said, this song references a line in the last one with the Lamia. So this could just be like the aftermath. Kind of like how I felt Carpet Crawlers was an aftermath after counting out time. Or this could be what I referenced before and more akin to the Greek mythology of Charon, the boatman, perhaps carrying him over and transitioning him from death, where he was before, and into something else. I would guess into life, but I can't assume because I would have to hear the next few songs to know that. This particular piece is just pure atmosphere. This is just pure mood. A great mood song actually after the last one. This still retains the tone of what I would say is the visualization of being in that cave. Just back to being alone again. Before, when he thought he was alone, the music was somewhat still in this tone. It was lonely, but in the last one, there was like refreshment coming after. This one sounds lonely and still very, very beautiful, but more of a grievance. More like he's lost something rather than found something. It also serves as a more melodic interlude, atypical and in contrast rather to the song that we listened to earlier with The Waiting Room, whereas that was like noise and chaos and cluttered and claustrophobic. This is calm, this is relaxed, isolated, yes, but very, very mellow. Now, where this literal or metaphorical boat is going to go next with Rail in it, or maybe not in it, I don't know. We're gonna find out soon. Third day of listening to the album. Once again, as I've been saying, sincerely hope that you've just enjoyed this journey. If you've stuck with it this far, even to the first video, but if you've stuck with it this far, thank you so much for watching. I still am sometimes bewildered why people watch this channel and enjoy it so much, but nonetheless, I seriously do appreciate it. Filling in the blanks for me when I miss something out of the music, providing fun and, personal experiences that you guys have with the songs and artists themselves, and just providing a really, really nice, friendly atmosphere in this community. So thank you for that. You can join me on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter. I did that in reverse order. You can follow me on Twitter. You can join me in the comments down below. You can support the channel and myself on Patreon if you'd like and help the channel expand that way, but you do not have to. I just hope that you enjoyed where you are at right now, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. We'll be finishing the album very, very, very soon, so I hope you're looking forward to that. And that's all I got to say for right now. Have a fantastic night, guys. I'll talk to you tomorrow.